The duck was happy to begin a quack, 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 and he was really getting into quack, quack. He was dancing to the samba, the samba, the samba, oh goose, oh. The goose came fast as he could be home.
Hi, I'm Liz Wong. Welcome to my studio. Today I want to tell you about Quackers, which is a book about a cat who thinks he's a duck and eventually learns that he is in fact not. And it's really about finding your place in the world. So the idea for Quackers came when I drew this picture of a cat who is blue for no particular reason. I wanted the challenge of writing a book where the text contradicted the images. It's incredibly important to look at other people's work, study other picture books and other illustrators, and find what resonates with you and what you like about it, and find out how to put those things into your own work. My influences are Sophie Blackall, Elizabeth Swerker, Carson Ellis. I would say I stole a lot from Peter Brown. I took a copy of Mostly Monsterly by Tammy Sauer and dissected the structure of that book and figured out how to write a picture book. It was a challenge. It's a challenge for me to write. I'm not very confident in my writing, and so it's always difficult for me to find words. The good thing is that I'm incredibly disorganized, and so I always lose my drafts and then I have to start over, and it's turned out to actually be a pretty good process because I don't get hung up on the words because they just don't exist anymore. My dummy. I like to make full-size dummies, and the point of the dummy is so that you can see how the page turn is going to work. Of course, it's to see if the illustration fits in the page and looks good, but it's really to see if it works as a book and to make sure that the pacing works and that as you flip the page, the dramatic moments are hitting at the right places. I've learned about the page turn to make sure that the jokes are at the right places and you have a balance of full page spreads and spot illustrations, and that it'll give you a little, when you have a full page spread, it gives you a little pause. So it affects the pacing of the book and the rate at which you're going to read the book. I love these Twist Erase, Pentel Twist Erase pencils. 0.7. It's my favorite pencil. It's nice and has kind of squishy and has a good eraser on it. And I like the size of this lead. They're having a big group hug. Luckily, these ducks are super easy to draw. When I'm drawing, I am trying to convey an emotion through body language and through facial expressions. These ducks don't have a lot of facial expressions, and neither does Quackers, honestly, because they don't have eyebrows. So for this particular book, it's more through body language than anything else. Positioning of beaks. So to get this rough into my final illustration, I am going to use a light box to transfer it to watercolor paper, and then I'll paint over it. Okay, I'm going to tape this on the back so that doesn't shift around when I'm tracing it. So now I'm just going to trace it lightly onto my paper. I would estimate that Quackers had probably about 4 or 5 revisions, but every one of them was incredibly painful. How's that? Okay, first I'm going to kind of coat it in water to kind of stretch it, and oftentimes I'll do this just by running it under the sink. Tap water. I'm going to do it both sides of it. I don't know if you're supposed to do this, but what I do. So now it's all wet. I'm just gonna dry off the edges a little bit. I use Winsor and Newton or Dan Smith watercolor. And when I'm working on a book that has a bunch of watercolor in it, I'll try to mix up a bunch of whatever color is going to be the main character so that it's kind of consistent from page to page. Yeah, I like these. These are like these Princeton synthetic brushes, which seem to work pretty well. I tend to like synthetics because I find that I have one brush that's a sable brush, which I am scared to use because it's too precious. When I was trying to figure out my illustration style, I was using a lot of digital with very bright colors and wasn't really happy with it. And then looked at a bunch of illustrators who I like and figured out that a lot of them are using watercolor. So I should probably use that. And a lot of them use very muted color palettes. So that caused me to change the colors that I was using. But watercolor has its own set of frustrations because you can mess it up so easily. But I like its imperfections to a degree. The way it kind of blobs out or is not totally flat, has some texture to it. The lines for the ducks are going to be in pencil, but I'm going to put white gouache over it to soften them a little bit. Bottom for a little shadow. That's how I watercolor. Now I'm going to scan it and manipulate it in Photoshop. So all the artwork for Quackers was created with some combination of watercolor and digital. This is a Cintiq Companion 2. It is a truly amazing, wonderful thing. So I'm going to open up Photoshop. So here's my scanned in artwork. I put guidelines around it so I have plenty of bleed. I can also zoom in and clean up any little bits of lint or fix things like his head here. Then I also hand lettered this book. So I have these little watercolor pieces of paper that I cut out and put a little shadow underneath it. And then the text goes on top of that. So I drew the text in pencil and then just cleaned it up and layered it on top of it. And that's how I created Quackers. My favorite spread is this one. I like it visually because I think it's cute and funny and it fills up the page in a nice way. This is also the spread where a lot of people will read this book and just think it's about cats and ducks. And to me, this is the spread where it's really obvious to me that it's about being a multicultural person amongst a bunch of white people. My main advice would be don't give up. Just keep making work. There's a lot of rejection in this business and you spend a lot of time not thinking you're gonna make it anywhere, and you just have to keep going and eventually somebody will say yes. Draw every day if you can. I would recommend SCBWI. I don't know if you've heard of this organization. And I would not be published if it were not for SCBWI. Classes, yes, take classes. Classes is really how I learned how to be an illustrator, and you know, just basic things like how many pages does a picture book have? When I first started out, I had no clue. And I learned how the business works and how to make a picture book.
Right in the water while they were singing away quack, quack, quack.
What happens when a duck flies upside down? He quacks up! Quack! Quack, quack!
The samba, the samba, the samba, they were dancing to the samba, the samba, the samba, they were dancing to the samba, the samba, the samba, they were dancing to the samba.